Welcome to the Talk Shop.
Welcome to another episode of the Talk Shop. I am Bernie.
I'm Chimdi.
Yes,
Welcome
yes.
everybody.
Welcome. We've got a big time episode for you with a very special guest, Aziz Garuba, Renaissance man, founder of Braided Media, director of financial transformation at RDC, I believe it is. Yeah, we're really excited. So check this out. Remember to subscribe, like, ring all those notification bells, all those good things that people say. So here's Aziz.
Yep, enjoy.
So, who am I? So I'm, I guess I'll start with what I do first. So I'm a finance professional. I work at the Royal Bank of Canada. I'm a director of finance within our capital markets business. I support and lead finance transformation initiatives for the platform. Looking at everything from process improvements to making sure that our approaches are efficient and optimizing what we do within the finance team that supports the business. Outside of that, I do a lot of interesting things. So very passionate about the Black community, passionate about diversity and inclusion, and really passionate about advancing Black professionals in their different fields. So with a large focus on, financial services, the Bay Street type stuff. Just generally wanting to see us move, all the way up the leadership chain into higher positions and being recognized, for all the skills that we bring. And then of course I'm a creative, got this podcast as well. So I'm the host of a podcast called Made to Lead, interview a bunch of amazing Black individuals from across the world that are leading in their own ways, in their own spaces. I also, I'm into photography as well. Used to shoot weddings prior to COVID, but sort of put that on hold until we can have better times to focus on that. So yeah, that's I guess that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. I didn't know you used to shoot weddings, and that was something you did even like through your career. You just do it as a passion, and you find time to do it regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, side hustle.
Very nice.
I shoot portraits as well, so some good headshots for clients. But that's kind of died down, since all of 2020, just because of the pandemic, and I don't want to put myself or other people at risk for now.
Yeah. How'd you get into? We'll talk business.
Yeah.
A little bit. And for those who didn't pick up on it, Bay Street is our Wall Street. Okay.
Yep.
In Canada, if you hear Bay Street, that's what we're talking about. I know no one in the world knows that but us, but that's fine. We'll get there. But how did you get into? Because I know it's Zizco Photography on Instagram, for those who don't know. By the way, before I met you, I knew about your photography.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I think Amara, my wife, had like looked at your stuff, and I know some other people looked at your stuff. I think my cousin had used you for some things. Zinni. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, oh, Aziz. Oh, okay. Yeah. It kind of all came together. But how'd you get into that? How do you get into photography?
Yeah, so it was I started officially in photography back in 2014, or even way before that. I was just shooting with little cameras and things like that, but I was headed off to London for work. I was going to be there for quite a bit of time, so I was like, all right, let me pick up an actual proper camera now, because I'm going to do the touristy thing in Europe. And I'll visit a few countries. I'll tour the UK as well, because I'm now going there as an adult, independent, working and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I picked up my first DSLR camera, Canon 100D or an SL1, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. And it came with as a kit, so it had a kit lens and a couple of other lenses. And yeah, when I got to the UK, I do street photography, like just walking around and just taking photos of things. Didn't know what I was doing too well, right, with a DSLR. And then while I was there, I ended up, being a guest photographer for one of my friend's weddings. And I was like, oh, okay, this actually looks good, So moved back to Canada middle of 2014, and I was like, all right, let me just invest in a bit more in this. I bought a better lens, and started getting some small little gigs here and there. Like I shot another friend's wedding, just as a guest, and again I was shooting it as if I was part of the wedding itself, and the images were just coming out nicely, and I was like, all right, this is something I could look into. So yeah, I started shooting some portraits, and then I think my first paid gig was a bridal shower that I shot for $100, for like I think maybe 5 hours or so, and it was fun. Started to learn about editing, teaching myself all about all about editing through YouTube and reading articles, and then just practicing. And then 2015, I was like, all right, let me get this deep into this. Just started looking for gigs, started booking a couple of weddings, and yeah, it grew from there. And shot some interesting weddings in interesting places. In Ottawa, I shot a wedding in as far away as Swaziland, in Nigeria as well.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So you're telling me, right? You shot a wedding in Swaziland. They flew you out to Swaziland.
So that one was funny because I wasn't supposed to be shooting the wedding there, right? I was supposed to be one of the guests for that wedding. And the wedding photographer could not make it because they didn't have a visa to cross from South Africa into Swaziland. And I was already there, and I had both my cameras. So
man stays ready just in case.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I hope they drop out.
Yeah. So, I shot a full wedding that went into the night without flash. Like, and this is challenging. Like when you're shooting Black people at night without flash, that can be very challenging. So, it pushed my skills to the limit, in terms of challenging circumstances. So I made use of every available light that was around. So manipulated some of the videographer's lights and some of the DJ lights, like, and the album that came out was just phenomenal. Like the pictures that came out were just amazing. And the couple absolutely loved it. They were super happy, at least that I was there to step in. So, it's taken me to some interesting places, and I've got to shoot even some of the portrait work that I've done. I've shot some VPs, shot some headshots for a few VPs and executives, and it's been my creative outlet. The creative side to the numbers part of my brain, which is accounting and finance daily, right? So photography was a good outlet, and especially as an introvert, trying to do, photography is a good solo thing, right? You don't have to talk to too many people, except your clients, right? And you could just blend in with an environment and just, whip out a camera and start shooting. So yeah, it was fun. And it's been fun so far.
It's so funny. I also have a thing for photography, but I never picked it up. And I always used to get, like, my aunts, I don't know if you do, but Bernie knows, is like we have our village, like annual meeting, monthly meetings and stuff like that, and they always have events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she always told me, look, bring your camera and take pictures. They'll pay you something, And for me, it was one, I didn't have the right cameras, so I was just using those point and shoot cameras. So I was like, And then secondly, just going to those things, sometimes if you go there in the wrong setting, they hound you. And they, so I was like, I don't want to do this. But now, whenever I think about it, I'm like, I should have gone for it, even if it meant spending money and getting the camera. If I didn't have the money, I know someone would have invested in me and given me the money. So I should have just done it. But, one of those things I never did back then because I was afraid of doing it.
Right.
It's one of those things that, like you said, it's an outlet. I found this podcast and, I like what I do here. Now, this is my outlet. I like what we do, me and Bernie. So I guess I found my space. But maybe at some point I'll get back into it.
Yeah. You can always. So my cousin's husband is also a photographer, but his main thing is he's an endocrinologist, right? Photography is what he does on the side as a passion, right? And he's he's built a crazy following for his landscape and birds and butterfly shots, right? Like he's, and you know, it's how he decompresses from a crazy day of seeing patients, right? He can travel to somewhere with his camera and just shoot. And, you know, he's gotten much better over time. His stuff has made it into National Geographic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he just does this for fun. So you can do that at any point in your life, you know?
Yeah.
And that's important, right? Because, you know, a lot of, you know, what I think all of us, like, you know, we have jobs that are very demanding, and I don't know if they're necessarily passions, right? It's like, I'm good at this, or you're good at this, and there is an enjoyable factor to it in some sense, sure. But you know, I was told when I was young and starting, you know, if you don't have something else that you're super passionate about, then work can like really get to you and bring down your mood. So unless you're one of those guys who's really, really passionate about the work itself, which I don't think everyone is, like, it's important to find something that you can do on the side, whether you make money or not. And it was good that you found yours in multiple things now.
Yeah, agree.
Getting into the number side, we'll come back to the creative side a little bit, but you mentioned, you know, there's a number side of you, and I'm on your LinkedIn, so let's go there. So I think I can safely say that we're all around the same age. I'm just looking at when you graduated your bachelor's degree. But here's where I want to go with this. Aziz, you are a very accomplished human being in a short amount of time. Okay, and I'm not just, you know, blowing your horn because you're here. Like, you know, we're talking about this guy's a director at RBC. Okay, let's understand that right now. And man's my age. Okay, I feel very, very insignificant in comparison to this man. But I'm curious as to sort of like maybe it won't go through your whole journey necessarily.
Sure.
But how do you get, like, for you, how do you think you've gotten to this point where you're a director of, you know, finance transformation initiatives? Like, because that's bold where you are, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting journey, and it started off, you know, as cliche as it might sound, from high school, right? Grade 11. So I moved to Canada over 20 years ago, and you know, had to move back a grade in high school, and I moved at a time where there was still grade 13 in Ontario. So I moved back a year and then still had to stay an extra year.
Oh, wow.
So in grade 11, I was taking this accounting class, and I fell in love with it. I was like, oh, this is phenomenal, you know, and I was doing well in it. At the time, the CMA, so Certified Management Accountants of Ontario, showed up on campus, you know, and not campus, in our school, and you know, we're doing the high school roadshow to convince students, you know, to do a career in accounting. And you know, they gave us these, you know, they had us sign up, and they gave us these business cards that said CMA, you know, student member, right? I mean, it was a free membership for a high school student, and I thought that was cool, right? And you know, I fell in love with that, and I was like, okay, yeah, I want to get into this space. I want to get into business. So I was better at my, you know, some of the business courses in high school than the sciences and the other stuff. So getting into university, so I went to University of Ottawa. I got in, I was able to get into the economics program because I didn't have the grades to get into business directly, because it was much higher than my high school average. But I worked my ass off in first year so I could switch into business for my second year without losing time, and got into the accounting program, and then went through it, right? And went through did a double major in accounting and finance. And started off my career as a tax auditor, right? And with the government of Canada, for Canada Revenue Agency. Did that for a couple of years, literally 2 years. And, you know, 2 years in, I was like, yeah, this is not the direction that I want to head in my life, right? So started looking at ways that I could pivot, that I could get out and do something else. And that's when I decided to do my MBA. And the Queen's option came up because it was an accelerated program. I wouldn't have to leave work, which means I wasn't going to lose work experience. But I'd still get, you know, a full-time MBA program from, you know, a tier 1 school in Canada. And so I applied, you know, and they found me worthy to admit, I was quite, I had confidence that I would get in, but I was still surprised because when I think about the folks that usually apply to MBA programs and the grades that they have coming out of undergrad, I didn't have much of that, right? So I graduated with a B average, right, or a B minus average. And, some other folks had done a ton of stuff. I was just 2 years out of university, right, and going into a business program. So it was an achievement to get into this, and went through the program, and I was focused at this point, like, because I was like, I'm doing this because I know where I want to get. Like, I need to exit where I am right now, and this is what's going to get me to, give me that credibility to pivot, or the tools to pivot. So did extremely well in the MBA program, graduated, and started looking for a new job. And yeah, I found and discovered, the RBC as a whole. But, most folks doing the MBA programs, right, it's like, I want to go into investment banking or consulting, right? It's like, I didn't want to do investment banking at all. And I actually went to an RBC investment banking info session to validate that I didn't want to do investment banking. And that was where I met someone that told me about a rotation program that the bank had, which was better suited to my own skills. And so I applied, forgot about it. And like a month later, they called me and it's like, hey, here's it, come down for an interview at Queen's. Did that, made it through to the final round, which was, I was living in Ottawa at the time. And then, final round was in Toronto, and yeah, whole day of interviews, right? Like back-to-back interviews. And, I felt fairly good after that, and then went back home, and they called me the next day. And it's like, yeah, would like to give you an offer to come join us. And you can start January 2013, right? So I was pretty excited. And what was happening during that time was I was also doing my accounting designation, like my CMA designation. So final round interview.
Let me ask you about that before. So,
yeah.
Just because I think Chimdi knows, or maybe it's a Canadian thing, because Chimdi,
you
did like your CPA. Is
I'm
there
a CPA here.
Is there a difference between?
No, I mean, he has a CPA, he has a CMA. I could get one if I want also.
Yeah.
GMA also.
So the Canadian version, so at the time I was doing this, there were 3 major accounting designations. So you could either be a CA, CMA, or CGA, right? In the US, it's, it's just, there's one. The main one is the CPA, which is the equivalent, to our CA here. So I was doing the CMA at the time, right? Which is more strategic management accounting, less on the audit side, because I was not interested in audit. So the week of my final interview with RBC, I also had a final interview with Deloitte the next day, as well as my CMA entrance exam, right? Wow. So all of that happening in 1 week.
Wow.
Yeah. so flew back from Toronto, on a Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, was prepping for my Deloitte interview, get the call from RBC that I've gotten the role. So I'm going into Deloitte Consulting with like, oh yeah, this is mine to lose, right? And then finished that, killed that, and then the very next day wrote a 4-hour exam. So by the end of that week, I was wiped. So I took the Friday off. I was like, I'm done. Ended up getting offers from both RBC and Deloitte. And consulting, I really wanted to do consulting, but I decided to go with the finance route because I'm doing my accounting designation. I want to deepen my knowledge in this space. I can always go back to consulting as a better subject matter expert after. December comes around and I give my job my 2 weeks notice. I was like, I wasn't going to tell them any earlier. So it was like 2 weeks, I'm out, and, moved to the big boy city of Toronto, January 2nd of 2013. And then started at RBC a couple of weeks later. And yeah, that's how I got into the bank. And, my finance career just sort of, took off from there. I did a rotation. RBC sent me to London, got to see different parts of the bank. And then ultimately, spent much of my finance career in the wealth management space. And then, I decided that, it was time for another, adventure, and consulting came calling. And that came through a networking opportunity because I had networked with a few partners a couple of years before that.
Mm-hmm.
And, just reached out one day and was like, hey, I'm looking for, something new. Do you guys have anything open? And the partner that I was friends with was like, yeah, actually, I'm meeting with a set of partners, tomorrow. Send me your resume. I'll put it in front of them. Right. It was literally that serendipitous,
I don't think people understand just how important networking is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I know Chimdi and I have talked about that on previous episodes because he was doing like a networking group, right? Like, yeah.
Which
really
didn't take off. It was very disappointing. I had the same feeling toward networking as you do, and I was trying to get like young Nigerian, African, but primarily Nigerian people to meet every week or every other week or whatever in New York City.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's maybe because of the circle I was inviting or whatever, but it just never, I didn't get as much interest as I thought we should, because we're all getting to the point where we should be networking a lot. Now, maybe, and I was trying to introduce them to that, and then maybe we would have gone further and brought like people that are deep in the industry and doing good things. So maybe we'll bring them in and it would start making more sense. But I was trying to get us as a group to understand each other, what we do, how we can lean on each other, and then branch out. Because that's the point of networking is, I'm not gonna close something with you today, but hey, in 2 years I could call you with an issue and we could resolve it, or you could have an opening, like you said, with that partner, a random email, phone call, and they tell you, oh yeah, something's come up. I didn't think about you, but you could probably do it. So So I was a little bit disappointed. So, and I was actually, to be honest with you, I was very disappointed and discouraged from it. So I stopped it, and that was just before COVID hit the next year. So I guess I don't know if it would have continued anyways. But
I mean, virtually, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was in public also till recently, till February last year. So I know the importance of networking through that. And if you want to get higher and higher in public accounting, you pretty much have to do networking.
Agreed.
So I learned all that, So yeah, your experience resonates with me.
Yeah.
Although sometimes I wish I did do this investment banking route. Now that I see people like you and my brother-in-law, and I'm like, okay, it could have been a different story, but I guess I'm happy where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I thought about the same thing on the investment banking side, but I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I would have survived. Like my personality wasn't suited for that space, So yeah, so serendipitous encounter with this partner. Like I just happened to email him the day before he's meeting with other partners in the space that I would want to work in. And within literally a few days, I get a call from Ernst & Young's HR team, and we just start a process. I also, again, got referred to Accenture at the same time. So I've got this, 2 consulting processes running at the same time. And I ended up ultimately going with EY just because they fit better with what I was hoping to do. The money, of course, was better from them. It just made more sense. And so I left RBC towards the end of 2018. Started my consulting career. So it was that whole thing where from business school, where consulting was what I wanted to do, right? I've now come full circle. Like I've now got that finance credibility that, that I can now take in. And, it helped with the engagements that I was on because I was meeting with finance folks, right? Like senior finance executives, that roll up into the CFO. So I understand what the issues they're dealing with, and I can address them quite well. And even my experience at RBC lended itself to helping solve, one of our client engagements as well. So that's how that played out, and then up until, the pandemic was just about to hit, and business was just going down, and I was one of those unfortunate casualties with the firm, and I got let go just before everything shut down. But I was annoyed and all of that because it wasn't a performance thing, right? Because I was already doing well, and I was on an engagement lined up for another one, and I was also mentally ready to do something else. I was like, all right, I've scratched my itch. I want to take what I've learned here and just do it within a single company, and drive change and see that change, all the way from beginning to end. So I had already started looking, and like I had an interview like 2 days after the day after I was fired, right? It was already set up, so it just didn't. It felt like, okay, I was just going in, going on to the next, and then the whole world shut down, right? So everyone's like every opportunity just literally died instantly, So like every one within my network that I had, and opportunities that I was already in just stopped dead in their tracks. And while all of this was happening, that's when I was also working on this podcast, trying to create this podcast. So I launched it in the middle of the pandemic. Literally my podcast launched the day or a day after we all shut down. And so it was funny on LinkedIn because when I posted that hey, I'm doing this podcast thing, I think a lot of people assumed that I had quit EY to become a full-time podcaster, because I had rolled out this, I had just had new photos taken earlier. So this was sort of like, oh, okay, now I can launch all of this. And so it just seemed like a well choreographed, branding unveiling, so which worked out great for the podcast, right? Because people started tuning in and whatnot. But yeah, so I was fun employed for a few months, and I think towards May of last year, 2020, when things started, people realized, oh, this is not just we're in this for the long haul, so we have to resume our businesses. Then some of the opportunities started coming back. Some folks started calling and say, hey, are you still interested? And then an opportunity at RBC came up, which is the role I'm in right now, that just fit what I was looking for. Like I wanted that combination of finance plus consulting in one space. And so I reached out to my old VP, one of my old VPs, and just said, hey, I saw this, I'm ready to come back into the bank. Can you put this through for me? And yeah, that was it, went through again, got a call, less than a week later, and went through the interview process. And then started back at the bank in July of last year.
That's an interesting experience, because someone will look at your resume and be like,
he's got it all.
You know what I mean? And then like you go through something like that, and you kind of alluded to it, but talk a little bit about sort of what, because I know you said you were other things that you were working on, and then so like it sounds to me like when you got laid off, you weren't really that bothered, because you're like, well, you know what, there's other things, but then they stopped dead. Like, so when those things stopped dead, how did you feel?
Oh, it was heavy, right? It was really heavy. And I think this is one of those things that, again, when you, like, as you mentioned, when you look at someone's profile and trajectory, you don't necessarily see what is, some of the things that are going on behind the scenes, right? So I sat on the bench, really, like I was on the bench for almost 4 months, right? I was working on this podcast, but I was looking at that, I was using that, and I first of all, I'd never been fired from anything, right? I had been working continuously, right, since undergrad for like 12, 13 years now. So it just felt like a hard stop to life, and I had to think about what my future was going to look like, right? I went through an existential moment, trying to figure out who I was outside of all of those things. Who is Aziz outside of the company, outside of the job title, outside of the role and all of the prestige that comes with all of that? And I had to go through this exercise, really, to define myself, so that no matter what company or job or role or space that I found myself in, if any of those were taken away, like my job was, I'd still be that person, So what came out of that discovery was really an understanding of what my brand, my strengths were. And it really was about being that transformational change agent within spaces. And when I looked back at my entire career, even, my time in undergrad, that was the common thing. Like every time I got into a space, it was about, improving the status quo, taking it to a different level, through same thing with when I was working at CRA. I tried there, but within the government, it's very difficult when you don't have any real power and authority. But when I got into RBC, I was making change immediately, and it was valued. It was, stuff that I produced would get, moved all the way up to the SVP or something like the CFO of the bank. And, the feedback would come back. It's like, oh yeah, this was good. Let's continue this. So I was seeing that real impact of stuff that I was changing. And then, ultimately in consulting, right, that is what you're hired to do, right, is drive change.
Right.
So that's what I then, came to the conclusion that is my focus. So when I was now interviewing again, once these opportunities came back, I felt more confident. I was clearer on what I wanted, what my expectations were. Turned down things that didn't meet, even though I was I was looking for work, right? And then the RBC one came back, and it just made sense. Not just because I knew the institution, but the role made sense. The team made sense. The executive that I was going to be working for, I already knew him from before and knew his reputation. I was like, oh, this is a good team. It's been very good so far, and through each one of these moves, I've made advancements, of course, in responsibility roles and getting to this somewhat leadership role within the organization, right? So that's the finance career up till now,
Yes, I mean, I was definitely going to ask that question because for me, the biggest thing, I mean, now I don't know if you're okay sharing this, but for me, when I think about this, I think mostly about my family, what would happen to me if that happened, So my mind is like,
oh yeah,
because I'm not even trying to think of any firing, any time. Like you, I always had my next move. I never had a situation where I thought my current job was at jeopardy, but I moved because I wanted to, or I saw a new opportunity to grow. So to me that boggles me, and and especially now, married, a kid, starting a family, it's like, okay, what would happen if something like that happened? And it can happen at any point in your life. Relatively speaking, I am 32 years old, turning 33, and I'm still at the start of my career, really, because I mean, there's still many years to go. Sometimes you feel like you have up to 10 years of experience, but really, there's still a long way to go. You're still, there's still time now at this stage to make changes and to actually find where you want to be. So it's still early. So I always, that's one of my biggest fears, like what happens if someone decides, that, this don't like working with you anymore, or someone holds their fate in your hands, and it's like,
and I thought about that. I really did think about that, during that period, because I was like, okay, how do I not get myself into this type of situation ever again, right? And that started with me understanding what my real value was, that, like I said, if I didn't have the role, I can still create value, right? Whether it's by myself or I can, get into the next thing or the next company very quickly, and I've been very purposeful in building the right skill sets to allow me to do that, working, even some of the particular rotations I took in my, when I started at the bank, they were all strategically done, right? Because for me, it was like, I need this skill to link to this skill like, I need to like, you need to see a story, when you look at my profile, that, okay, this all flows, right? Because then if I'm looking at another opportunity, I don't have to do too much explaining about, oh, why am I good for that role, or what's transferable,
right?
And also, because I also don't want to be beholden to another company, like I don't want them to have my life in their hands, and especially, Chimdi, as you mentioned, right, like when you start to, when you now get married, when you now have kids, like it becomes a bit more challenging. And I think everyone should think about that, even if it never happens, but just think about it. I think sometimes for us as Nigerian men, right, we are forever optimists, like we are confident in our abilities, and like it's almost like, oh, we cannot fail when we have put mind to purpose, right? But sometimes it does happen, not that we failed, but just something went wrong, right? That we didn't anticipate, and you just got to figure out how to do that, or how to get out of that.
Yeah, sometimes it's not in your control. It's not your fault. Like, it happens. So, you know, I'm glad that you opened up about that, because I think a lot of people just need to understand to also be kind to themselves. Like, there are some times when you know, I got fired from my first job ever out of university, and that was my fault. Like,
I didn't know that.
That was legitimately I didn't tell you that. Oh man, yeah,
I didn't know
like,
that. No,
I was working for a small sustainable building materials company, because I graduated economics and geography, and my whole thing was, you know, I want to go save the world. Like, that was my thing. So sustainable building materials, I was like, great, awesome. She gave me a job, but I came in. It was a, you know, small family company, 3 people literally, and they're a distributor. And my role was a bit just to do everything, you know, kind of make sure things go well, transactions go here and there, and stuff gets logistics and stuff. And I'm there in the office, like in the probation period, and I'm like playing my music loud in the office. Like, I had thought I had made it. You know, I was basically acting like, you know,
I own the place.
Yeah, and this little salary that I was getting at that time, which I thought was so much money, like, you know, you look at it now, you're like, oh my God. Like, I had a 30-minute lunch break, which is still a human rights violation in my opinion. But I would take an hour, you know, thinking whatever, you know, like I don't even, like, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe that, like, I was behaving this way. And I messed up a couple orders. I think I just wasn't paying enough attention. And she said something to me that was really interesting. She was like, listen, like, I can't move forward with you anymore. You know, this is just me and my husband and you, you know, like, we're not a big company where we can really afford to take things on and massage it in. Like, you know, we need someone that can get going right now. Like, and you're not ready for this right now. But she said to me, never forgotten it, you're a really smart kid, but I think you need to go into the corporate, like big corporate side, and have their like, learn discipline, go through their training program, because you can make it there and then come out. And that was literally the next move I did. I didn't want to do it. I had to hear from her and then my dad. And I still didn't want to do it, but I did, because I wasn't corporate in my head. I wasn't that guy. I got in, I did exactly that, and I killed it, absolutely killed it. And that's that was the most important lesson I learned in my career. Because now I walk into anywhere and I'm the best at what I do. That's good. It's how it works, but it's because I have this thing in the back of my head, like, you know, I've already been fired, I already failed, but I've learned the lesson. And it's, you know, I think it's, I was not kind to myself then, but, you know, I think sometimes it's not in your control, sometimes it is, but either way, like, especially as Black men, we're not kind to ourselves. So we need
not really. Not really. And I've had to learn that, you know, and sometimes you need, you know, people come into your life to help you learn those types of lessons, you know, or even help you develop the skills and the mindset to appreciate it, or even know that this is a space that you need to focus on. You know, and my wife has been one of those people, right? You know, just she's gotten me to think more about how things that occur or happen to me, how they make me feel, you know, because, you know, for the longest time, it's just, oh, this has happened, I keep it moving, right? But not taking time to actually process it. Yeah. So you're like, damn, I'm getting this new job, right? Or I think she highlighted this when I was moving from RBC to EY, and she was like, Aziz, this is a big moment. And to me, it was like, oh, but it's just like, it's just the natural progression of things, right? Why should I be more excited than how I feel right now? And, you know, she was like, no, you know, you have to celebrate these things and just think about it, like, this is big. You're leaving a company that you've been in for so long, and you're now doing something, you know, and I had to pause after that. I was like, oh man, you're actually right. Like, I never thought about it this way. So, you know, there are things, you know, for us as men that we have to, or, you know, just take more time to absorb and feel, so that we're, you know, better human beings, I think.
Yeah. And I think also with that, you know, being Nigerians and overdoing things generally, one thing I've learned in my roles so far is not to overextend myself, and I
Yeah.
literally mean physically, like, or overdoing, thinking that spending, like, sleeping at the office is what will make me, stand out so much.
Right.
I mean, initially it could help, but I also purposefully left, didn't join the big four, because I know sometimes as a staff accountant, they could do that to you just because they don't
They
care, they
want
want
it.
stuff done.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I told myself from my last job that never going to do that to myself. I tell all my staff that I supervise now, if you need to take vacations, you have vacation days for a reason. Do not feel like you can't take vacation. Somebody will step up for you. Obviously we can't all go away at the same time, but
Yeah.
I don't want you to ever come to me telling me you're feeling pains in your chest because you couldn't rest or something, or get something
Yeah.
done. I will never be that boss. I don't want you to be that kind of person, or treating people nice. One of my first jobs out of college in accounting was just me and another man who was Nigerian and was pretty much a family friend. And I feel like I was underappreciated. Obviously, I was a freshman. I was just out of school, but still, there were some things he did that were typical Nigerian father behavior at
Mm.
work. I'm like, that's not how you should treat me because you know my family. And even if you know my family, I highly doubt my parents are gonna like that you did this to me. So why do you have to be a dickhead about stuff? Or I just passed my CPA. I thought, okay, fine, you're Nigerian, you know how it works in Nigeria. Kind of want to do NYSC, you know, give me a little bit of break, or let me leave and so I can do NYSC, and then I come back and find a new job. He was like, oh, first of all, he didn't want to sign up for my CPA papers because you had to have work experience or whatever.
Oh my.
So he said he didn't think I was ready. I'm like, okay, I don't know what you mean by that, but I've worked hard for this and I've worked hard for you, and I am, by letter of the law, ready to do this. So sign my papers. He was holding me hostage there. And I guess it was because I also said I wanted to go do NYSC. So he was like, you can't just use me like that. Okay, fine, whatever. I just told him, you know what? Sign my papers and I'm out. I did, and from then on, I knew, don't work with anyone that knows you from Adam.
Mm.
Don't be essentially a slave for someone who could write your destiny if you don't stand for yourself. So those kind of things, no matter who my boss is, I'll be respectful, but also know what your worth is and speak up for yourself.
Right.
Little things along the way, you learn and you pick up, and makes you who you are now, I guess. So I like that progression.
That's it, man. It's important. It's important. Like, I can't even imagine someone Chimdi, like just being an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
that's just
Honestly,
weird, bro.
it was bad. I don't know what he was just mean for no
Yeah.
reason.
Those are horrible
I'm sure
people.
I'm sure you can imagine it. Like, you
Oh
can imagine
yes,
what I'm
yeah.
talking about.
I can visualize the torment.
Exactly,
The
exactly.
torture.
So something he definitely wouldn't do to someone that he didn't know, like an American
Yeah.
or something. He
Yeah.
wouldn't do that to them. But because of who I was, I feel like he felt like he's sponsoring me while I'm here. So why
Mhm.
not,
Yeah. The
do whatever he wants?
familiarity is
Or
breeding contempt.
exactly. It's crazy. But
That's
anyways,
that's crazy. Let's get into some things that are close to your heart, and we'll wrap it up. So how do I put this? Okay, let's be direct here. You're a
Sure.
black man in Toronto, well, Canadian finance. It's a very
Yeah.
rare breed of human being. And you're very passionate about elevating those numbers, and Aziz works with us at Black Mint to work to elevate Black people into technology as well. So inclusion is very much something that I know it's a center of his thought process. I guess firstly, what is it like probably being very rare breed in the industry, and what do you hope to do, and what advice do you have for young Black men and women trying to get into this field?
Right. Yeah. So like within finance, and I'll talk about my experience even just when I joined. Like, so I think I didn't recognize that I was Black per se until I moved to Toronto. Right. In Ottawa, like I grew up, I went to school with a whole bunch of white people, right? I just, when you're coming from Nigeria, it's like you just assume, oh yeah, we're going to a white country, right? So that's just what it's going to be. And the advice you always travel with in your head is, just don't do things to get arrested, right? Because you'll be a disgrace to your family. Not that, oh, it's you can't trust the police type of situation. It's just like, yeah, no, don't embarrass us and don't be that black kid that gets arrested. So yeah, it was moving into Toronto, moving into finance that I really, because I was now hearing more about this in this city. And then I think like 8 months, 9 months into being in Toronto, I discovered an organization which at the time was called UFSC. So it was the Urban Financial Services Coalition, which has now evolved to the Canadian Association of Urban Financial Professionals. And I got in there, and this was the first time, I think, for a long time that I had seen a whole bunch of professional folks in finance in one room, a whole bunch of Black professional folks in this space. And I was like, all right, I got to join this. I got to figure out how to make, contribute and do stuff with this. And so, yeah, that's sort of where a lot of this stuff began, right? In terms of that passion for, seeing more Black people in the industry. And as I moved through my experience at the bank and being involved with the organization, I got to see the gaps that existed. And so I eventually became president of this organization. And what I focused on was, let's close the gaps from a skill set, both hard and soft perspective, that our people have, right? Because you'd hear these things like, oh, I went for the interview, I didn't get the job, I think they're racist in that company. And, I was like, yeah, that may be true, but let's look at what it is that you aren't doing right, and let's fix that first. Because I believe that if you address the pieces that you can control, right, just like with any statistical problem or hypothesis, right, where you rule out all of the other options, then what is left can be the reason, is the only reason why something isn't working. So let's say you've sorted everything that you want to do, and then we find out that, oh yeah, well, it's a discrimination thing, that's the issue, then at least we know it clearly. But if there's a gap in like, oh, you didn't answer the questions well, you didn't communicate your point of view, completely, or you applied for a job that you don't have the right skills for, right? Then, we're just sort of shooting and, and not aiming. So we ensured that, the programs that we were working on at the time, like the professional development programs, focused on these areas. So like we did an interview skills workshop. We got VPs of HR from some of the banks to lead these workshops. And there was one particular one that I was present to see how it went. And we had a VP of HR from TD that was leading it, white lady. And, there were about 25 participants. And, one of the things an activity she had them do was, she's got a bunch of random questions in this basket. Pick one out and, you answer the question as if it's an interview, right? And these were not business questions. These were just literally random questions about silly things in life. And so as most people were going around, she would tell them straight up, right? If you answered a question like that in an interview, I would not hire you, right? She was that blunt. And this was when we discovered like, oh, snap. This is the real issue here, right? And so, we started to work with some folks to improve and beef up their interviewing skills so that they could then get, because a lot of them, like people were getting interviews, some, like a lot were getting interviewed, but they just weren't getting the jobs. And then some weren't even making it past the resume screening because they didn't have their resumes done right. So those were gaps that we're trying to close within the Black, community, just so that we could say, okay, we've done all we can. If the organization is still not, bringing in Black individuals, then there's a problem with the organization and their mindset. And then we also looked at, okay, what about the pipeline, right? We're looking at, folks that are already in and want to move, or some folks that just want to get in from somewhere else. What about those that are in university, right? And that's where we revamped our youth strategy to really expose Black youth to what careers and options in financial services on Bay Street were. And we got companies to actually come in and recruit from these students. In the format that we had, that we revamped. The first time we did it, TD hired about five students, and then every year it just after that it just started increasing. To the point that CAUFP is now the talent funnel for Black talent in financial services, and every bank wants has partnered with the organization. So that's where my passion came from, and I've pushed that even internally within the companies that I've worked for. I've sat on diversity leadership councils, and I boldly push the Black agenda. I tell folks that my skill set is to borrow a line from Scandal. I'm a gladiator in a suit, right? And I do my best battles inside corporate, not on the streets. It doesn't mean that those that do their battles on the street are are less relevant. No, we just all have to know our lanes, right? Mine is just best done there, right? And I like to be close to where the change and the decisions are being made so I can influence them, than just be far away, and that's what I've been able to do, help improve, recruiting goals, and, having us strengthen, having companies that I've been in strengthen their resolve for bringing in more Black talent. I think I've probably single-handedly, at least within RBC, brought in about maybe 20 to 25 Black people, gotten them hired at the bank.
And that's the important thing. Like Chimdi and I were talking about this yesterday on the podcast we were on. More in the context of sort of the reaction to George Floyd, and sort of what happened there in the world, right? Like, what was the reaction over here and in New York? And we were saying that, like, some people can go out into the streets and go and protest and demand legislative change, and some people are more suited to working the system, corporate system.
Yeah.
Because if you can get more Black people financial empowerment, just to put it bluntly,
right,
via their career, that's money in pockets, is big, significant change.
Yep, right? It really is.
So
it really is, and that was my perspective, and is my perspective. I was like, the more of us that can get into these higher income earning professions, the more capital we can create or accumulate, and build wealth, and then deploy that to address some of the social issues that exist, right? So think about it. I mean, if we are in a community of affluent Black people, we can afford therapy for our kids, right? We can afford social services or fund after-school activities that keep them off the streets, or keep them engaged enough so that they're not distracted and get into trouble, right? You can afford to have help, right, with childcare, right? Versus where we are now, that you see, single parent households or even dual parent households where you've got to travel 2.5 hours to your job because you can't afford to live close enough to the job because you're not making enough money to do that. So there's a ripple effect from just getting a job. And so when we had when we're working with these young Black kids, that some of them had never been to downtown Toronto, had never seen a financial services company up close and personal. And then they get an internship at RBC or TD, right? For the summer. Yeah, let's say they make 20,000 for the summer, right? That's 20 grand more than they had coming in. So it changes their economic trajectory. They can pay off a student loan if they have it, or if they're, fortunate enough to not need it, it helps with their living expenses, or they bank it for something else. So that literally opens up the doors for their future. And then, when they come out of school, you've got RBC, you've got TD, Scotia on your resume or wherever you worked. And that gives you more credibility. It now gives you access, and everything, the ripple effect for the rest of their lives is incredible, and that's what, I'm passionate about, and just sort of, moving forward for folks like us.
Chimdi, you're on mute.
My bad. I think I told Bernie before, like if I didn't, I wonder how it would have been if I got those internships I applied for at KPMG and Deloitte when I was an undergrad. One, I was in Buffalo, so I don't know if that played any part, but I just didn't get those roles when I was competing with kids that were from Buffalo, white kids, stuff like that. So I just didn't. And then that's why my first job out of college was at HSBC doing loan processing. At least it gave me something, and I was in the financial. That's what I thought about. I went to one of the temp companies and found that, and then my next job after that was with somebody that I knew. And then as I grew, and then you get the opportunities. But then my point is, like, if you had started, at a KPMG internship at one summer, and then another summer do another one, how would things be? I feel like also teaching kids undergrad right now that try to get internships as early as possible, your first or second summer, maybe sophomore year summer, and then junior year summer. So you get 2 summers of interning somewhere, two
Yeah.
summers work experience on your resume, as opposed to looking for internships in junior year stroke senior year before MBA year. And now your resume is looking threadbare when you go out to, like, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just about knowledge and learning these things from the right places, speaking to the right people, having mentors and people that can tell you, this is how you should go about it. And so it's key to do those things. That's why I like what you guys are doing with Black Mint and with all your other endeavors. It's good to teach people from that point of view.
Yeah.
Look, this is how you approach this business world. Because if you don't, especially for us, it's not as easy. No matter how smart you are.
Did I hear $20,000?
I thought about it too, but it's possible.
I was like, huh? Like, why did I not attempt? I didn't even attempt it. I was trying to enjoy my summer. I was wild back then.
That is the average. That is the average salary that a bank intern makes over the course of the 4 months of summer.
When you think about it, though, Bernie, when you put it per hour times hours for the summer, it doesn't. If they tell you the per hour number, doesn't sound as
this is
but again, think of it as a student, right?
As a student,
yeah. You've never seen this amount of money in.
If I had, the thing is, I'm glad I didn't get that type of money, because the things I would have done with that money is not good, at all. But you think about it, right? That's a quarter, right?
Yeah,
20 grand a quarter.
Yeah,
that's if you actually graduate, right, first year, because I think average the kids get with an undergrad degree and first job is 45, something like that.
Yeah,
you're doubling, almost doubling that. If you extrapolate that out, that's
it's not bad.
If you're listening to this, and you need an internship, or let them know RBC is paying money.
and it's most of all the banks, especially, and it also depends on which part of the bank that you get into, right? So of course the investment banking, capital markets side is usually a little bit higher, but you do work for your money, right? Versus, let's say, versus retail banking. But again, at the end of the day, I'm a student. I've gotten experience. I've gotten paid for my experience. My life is going to be different after this, and then of course we have to supplement that with the right kind of financial literacy, again, so that they know what to do with their funds, right? And I think that's a gap that's being frequently closed by a bunch of different initiatives within the Black community. Because even for some of us that were in the institutions, financial literacy for even in our 30s is still a challenge, right? So that's an area that I think where a lot of associations are still putting in work to make happen.
Awesome. And for people to understand the Canadian system, at least when I was in undergrad, it's the same time as Aziz, 20,000 could cover for just under 4 years of university. Just under that. Even at U of T, it was 7 G's a year. Commerce was maybe a little bit higher, but even then, at least 75 to 80% of that you could do in one shot. If you really think about that, that's powerful right there. If you have student loans or anything like that, That is very, very powerful. Or even if you don't, you can take that off your parents and like pay it yourself, and you know everyone's happy. So it's something to think about. But yeah. As we wrap up, I want to talk about something really exciting. Talk Shop with Chimdi and myself, we are joining Braided Media. Braided Media is a podcast network that showcases African talent and African creators and African shows. And we've got the head of the thing right here. So exactly. Aziz, thanks for having us. You know, this is gonna take our show to the next level. If you haven't listened to Made to Lead, please do so. It's a great, wonderful podcast. You know, Aziz, do you want to talk more about
sure,
and Made to Lead a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And we're glad to have the Talk Shop as part of the network. You know, we came up with this idea, like, so me and a bunch of other podcasters, you know, got together and we're like, okay, you know, what can we do with our shows and how do we elevate it? And then we decided, you know what, let's create a network for Black podcasters, right? Particularly those of us that are, you know, are of African backgrounds, largely because you know we're thinking about the podcasting space and building the infrastructure now to take advantage of growth that is ultimately going to happen both on the continent right now and capitalize on what's happening in the diaspora as well. So we came up with the name Braided, and it you know, it was we went through sessions just thinking of the right name, and we use Braided because it's represents, you know, just the African braid is a common thing that we all know regardless of where you're from on the continent. It's a hairstyle that's that's ubiquitous to many Black people, and it also represents that weaving of the tapestries of our stories, of our history, of our styles, and of the fabric of the continent itself. So we didn't want to use a name that was cliche African, you know, map of Africa type stuff, and hence the name Braided. And so, you know, we built this network and we called it, you know, a network, you know, with what we call raw and refined shows. And the rawness is the fact that we're unapologetically African in the way we do our thing, you know, and the refined piece is that we package our shows well, so that they have both local and global appeal. So we kickstarted this, launched it. You know, it's been in the works for quite a while, but you know, soft launched it just a couple months ago. And yeah, we're bringing, you know, a couple more podcasts onto the platform, and then we're going to be doing a lot of what we call braided original shows. So really creating interesting podcasts, you know, with an African focus, African lens, and you know, just bringing out some new content into the world. So yeah, and so my podcast is on the network Made to Lead. We've got a few others, so check out you can check them out on braidedmedia.co. And the Talk Shop will be visibly on there within the next, by the time people hear this, it should be on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're really excited to be part of that stellar cast so far. So you guys should look out for that. We will make sure that we put that everywhere on our social media.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, Aziz, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate your time. I think our listeners and us, we've learned a lot, and that's why we do this, right? We want to hear from people from diverse backgrounds, who are doing big things and who we can just sit down, have a chat with, and we're gonna have you on again. That's for sure.
Yep, for sure.
But yeah, I think Chimdi has one more question before we go.
After we're done recording.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take that no one will ever hear.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate being on this.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.
Welcome to the Talk Shop.